Hey, welcome back, everybody. Wargroove. We're gonna play the next mission. One is one that we're gonna meet an old rival again. So we're in the Lost Leagues. I've never. Death from above! Oh no, not you again. That's right, it's me, and this time I have vampires! I can't lose! Who's this clown? Shut up, weed. I'll annihilate you. Ah! This won't be like the last time, not with vampires ruling the skies. Vampires are aeronauts, strong, fast, and airborne. Exactly. You've got no help. Luckily, Alchemist and Ballistas both excel in anti-air units. What? Correct, Mercia. Alchemists even have the ability to heal our units, just like a mini Marcia. What I didn't do, I played this recently, and I wasn't being aggressive enough. So, weird is that the AI really likes to target down your commander. So one of the things you want to try to do is have your commander take the majority of the not the damage, but you know, to sort of pull in. We want another alchemist, so we'll recruit the alchemist. And only got 200, so let's make it a pike. Nope, can't afford a pikeman, so we'll just skip it. Our end turn. So for some reason this guy moved in my range, so we're just gonna kill him. Whatever! Arg! How did... whatever, I have loads more where that came from. We're gonna capture this. Alright, the beans. I'll put you here. Thing. Sure. This time we're gonna do double pikeman here. Here. So we'll come down. And here I don't have enough else, so like I said, double pikeman. Fine. So the main strategic aim to this level is to first neutralize the flyers, which is easier said than done, and then either push towards the commander or the capital and take them out, whichever is easier. What's odd about this level is that the commander tends to be very timid, hang back a lot, only seems to attack when it's necessary. One of the things I gotta learn about this game is the damage numbers. Like, I very much don't know how much damage
stealth to and from enemies. I'm always very cautious when I'm trying to attack. Yeah, I think that's it for this one. Gotta restart. Try again. Poor move here. Alright. So through here. We're gonna start out with the same stay stick. You're coming down this way. Put you down. Wait. First couple turns have to be spent building Alchemist because you gotta neutralize the air threat and then follow up behind it with, you know, your ground-based units.
Whatever.
Works for me. Not like I like you or anything, Baka. Pikemen are always a good option. They're slow moving, but once they get into battle, they're solid contenders, solid units. Yep, that's dead, is very much so. So today I was playing a prank on one of my coworkers, for Monday that is. He's a little bit of a scamp. And so at the end of the day after he left, after I clocked out, I made a wall of toilet paper rolls and put it in his cube. Front of his cube. Hopefully it will not fall over between now and Monday when he comes in. I'm going to probably start a prank war that I can't win, but nevertheless, thought it was funny. So once I defeat all these flying enemies, she could still make more flying enemies. It really depends on what the AI says in terms of a build order, what to do next. There have been times where immediately after I've defeated all of the air units, she starts producing more air units. And then other times when you play this level, you can beat all the air units and they don't come back per se right away. Mad. Very mad at you.
What?
Now there's only one air unit left. Stop killing my guys. It's rude. Speed. Let's see, what do I need? Got use a knight, or we could go with two more pikemen. I don't think I can afford a knight, but no, I cannot. So 2 pikemen for you. That works as well. I'm still making my way through the Bible. That tends to be, well, I shouldn't say it tends to be, kind of interesting, as the Bible seems to be written at a different time period entirely. Because on the one hand, where I'm at, I'm in the books of Moses, which is, I'm up to Deuteronomy now. And like, on the one hand, the laws are very, the laws of Moses are very straightforward. And on the other hand, it's kind of more complicated than even that. Like, everybody knows 10 Commandments, and they very, very highly stress the, hey, you're not going to have any gods before me, right? You're not going to worship any false idols, right? Or any other god, right? And that was probably more of a issue then than it is now, in terms of worshiping other deities. Nevertheless, that was one that they very much stressed, and I have to feel that's because, those books of Moses, the Torah was written during the Babylonian exile, and it's just basically the writers at that time trying to stress to the people, hey, turn back from your current ways, come back to your God, God of your ancestors, and we can come back, maybe come back to Israel or Jerusalem, and I get it, and at the same time, like, some parts of the Bible are very, they're hard to swallow in certain places, like in a comparison between, say, you know, what we consider acceptable and what is considered acceptable at that time period. Like slavery, you know? Or like, for instance, you know, like rules of war, you know, rules of combat. Where like, hey, back in the, you know, ancient era, what you would do is you would come and you would say, hey, surrender us. And they would say, nah, we're not going to surrender you. We think we can beat you. And then the solution to that problem is to, or at least within the Bible, is to, if you take that village or you take that town, what you do is you enslave all of the women and children, but you kill all the boys and men. So that means, like, if you're an elderly person or a person who's not necessarily military related, you'll still get slaughtered the same as, you know, just for having a ding-a-ling as anyone else. And I'm sure there's a historical reason for that, but, you know, it's just, you know, as to be a dude is just like, okay, hope you made the right choice. For women, it's not much better because you're essentially treated as like cattle, property, whatever you want to call it. At least early on you are. You know, you do have, in the Mosaic law, you do have rights, but like essentially, you know, you don't have the same level of power and responsibilities men do. At the same time, like the way, at least the way the Mosaic laws laid down, like if you Israelis took over, or the Jewish people took over a village, and you were a woman, you would get to live. And I don't know in terms of how good your life would be, because you'd essentially be a slave. But at the same time, you know, you'd be entitled to something, you know what I mean? And again, I don't know enough about ancient history or biblical history from that biblical time. What I do know is that, well, aside from the fact that she was able to create a Titan, which is fucking bullshit, is that it's not really great to be anybody, you know, in that time period. You know, the priestly class, the Levites, you know, they can't own property, and they're sort of dependent upon the people providing for them, which is written in the law to provide for them. But you can't own property. Okay? So again, you're dependent on your community. In the same regard, at least from what I've read in the Bible, you know, they're like a higher chosen people in comparison to, say, you know, the average Joe. Okay? And at the same time, like, hey man, maybe you shouldn't, like, say that, you know, complain against God and all this fun jazz. You know, maybe you should just be like, look at all the good stuff He did for you, you know, not complain that you're in the, you know, the desert. And then, you know, once He brings you into the promised land, maybe you shouldn't, like, worship other gods or, like, cheat on Him, you know? But I don't know. Very, on the one hand, it's a lot more down to earth, but there's still a lot of, like, repetition that I saw in Genesis, in the other Mosaic books of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And whereas you could say, well, that's just them compiling works, I also feel like some of that also has to do with the fact that it's like, hey, You got it? Do you get it? Don't do that. Hey, I'm telling you again, don't do that. Hey, I'm telling you not to do that. Stop doing that. Because again, it's written in a time period. It's not current events. It's you're writing essentially a historical version, or a revised version of your history. You know, where some of the facts are probably more true than others. But the events themselves are probably pretty accurate, I imagine. I mean, I'm putting a lot of trust in, what is probably a book written to, like I don't want to use the word propaganda because then I'm going to get crucified, but, I mean, it was, from what I understand, the book was written at a time when they were exiled in Babylon, and they were trying to basically, rekindle, their past greatness, and try to get the people to turn away from their current life and, embrace what was and how they got to that point. A bit of nostalgia, if you will. We were great people, we can be great people again. We just need to trust the Lord, that sort of stuff. That stuff's kind of interesting. Some of the ages are ridiculous, though. Like Moses was 120 when he died. Some of the ancestors in Exodus, or not Exodus, in Genesis lived to be several hundred years old. Like I think Adam was like 700 or 800 years old when he died. If you're taking it literally, like, oh my God, like the older, the more generations we have, the more deluded we are from, the perfect man, perfect person away from God. And at the same time, it's like probably just meant in layman's term that they were very old when they died. Not necessarily they went around the sun 900 times or 800 times. But they talk about that in Genesis as well, where everybody lives like an extraordinarily long time. Noah and Adam and Eve and all of them. And then essentially the Lord declares that no one shall be over, whatever, 120 or so years old. So
I'm gonna break you!
fascinating stuff. Basically, I'm learning what's really in the Bible, and I'm learning what really is Mosaic law. The laws that they talk about in terms of any good foundation. I think you shouldn't once you get past the ones dealing, first 3 commandments deal with God, or worshiping God, no false idols, only he is the one and only God, no other gods before him, sort of thing. Okay, then after that you get into the other ones, which are don't steal from people, don't lust after people or objects or things, don't steal things. I already said we don't steal, but like don't steal your neighbor's wife, or lust after your neighbor's wife, or property or slaves or whatever. And all of that stuff sort of goes together as this basic, like, yeah, we have to spell it out for you because you can't seem to figure out the difference between stealing a gold coin and stealing, say, you know, your neighbor's slave or ox or wife or whatever. Oh, here, we'll spell it out for you. Don't do those things, you know? And those kind of work, you know, to this day, you know? But there's a lot of things that are in those books that they talk about that, you know, either wouldn't jive, you know, we would disagree with, just simply because we're at kind of a, I wouldn't say a weird point in history, or in a definitely a, you know, a different era. Like, one of the things they talk about is men not dressing in women's clothing, and women not dressing in men's clothing. Well, you know, what determines men's and women's clothing? A dress, you know, versus, you know, like a suit and tie. You know, people are always going to try to push the fashion boundaries in terms of what men and women can wear. So yeah, this is the first time she's rebuilt some of her flying units, but she's always scripted to say that when she builds her first flying unit, after you've defeated her other ones. But one of the other kind of interesting things is they talk about, you know, when you go through your field, okay, or you go through your vineyard, okay, or, you know, whatever, olive, you know, place, you know, olive trees, I think, but where olives come from. Anyways, showing my ignorance. But they talk about when you go through your field, and you pick your grape, or you harvest your wheat, and you forget to get some of it, i.e. you go through and you miss some grapes. You're supposed to leave those grapes for the foreigner, the poor, the widow, you know, so they have something to eat, you know. You go through a second time in your vineyard and find all the remaining grapes, nothing left over for the needy, you know. And then they talk about the concept of tithes, you know, to give X amount to God. And they talk about taking, you know, after you've worked the fields, this has different connotations, but after you've worked the fields for so many years, you have to let them rest, because otherwise they become dried out and burned up, and they won't yield produce anymore, which is, you know, the determined scientific fact that, hey, don't do that. That's not good for the long-term health of making sure that you have food in the coming years and decades. And then obviously the sacrifice stuff is just, in terms of where we are now versus where they were, is just so bizarre. You know, they had rules and regulations as to what to do, how to kill it, you know, obviously, and then obviously, you know, rules and regulations on what could be sacrificed. You know, obviously, if you know, have a sheep or a cow born with 3 legs or something, you know, it's not an I mean, you're not going to want to keep the cow anyways. It's probably, you know, it's got something genetically wrong with it. It's sort of what I'm trying to get at. And you can't just say, well, I guess I'll sacrifice this one to the Lord. It's like, now the Lord wants your best. He wants, you know, a cow or a sheep or whatever with no defects to be sacrificed. And like, that's, in a way, that's kind of like, you know, for me anyways, it's like a dedication. Like, you're really truly dedicated to that, to say, hey, you know, my cow had its first calf, and now I gotta sacrifice this first calf to the Lord, you know, with no guarantee necessarily that the cow has more calves after that. Will it? Probably, but no guarantee, you know. Cow gets sick, die, etc. Plus, you know, you're reducing the possible long-term success of your, you know, ranch, what have you. I don't know. I thought all that stuff was kind of interesting, and at the same time, you very much can see where it's like, yeah, this was written It was written in ancient times where people would regularly sacrifice to gods, like physical things, living things, cows, sheep, and birds. Talk about clean and unclean animals, which is kind of weird in that, like, pigs are not clean animals. They have cloven hooves, but they don't chew the cud, so they're considered unclean. Vultures and other birds that are predators are considered unclean, you know. And, you know, certainly people, you know, which is a constant theme, again, as I guess the writers are trying to justify their exile into Babylon. But, you know, the Lord seems very difficult to be pleased in the early books. And on the one hand, he's very difficult to please, and on the other hand, in terms of the way the rules are laid down and such, like, he gives you all these opportunities to be forgiven. Usually involves, again, some sort of sacrifice, animal produce sacrifice, you know, as penance for your sin. And not everything that is considered sinful means that you have to then turn around and you know, sacrifice to be forgiven. Like, some crimes like murder, adultery, those are, you're dead. We're gonna take you out in the field and we're just gonna stone you. You know, an eye for an eye sort of thing comes up. You know, there's other sort of bizarre ones that I've read, like if two men are in a fight and the wife of one of the men grabs the other man's testicles to try to help her husband, she's to have her hands cut off. Again, a very, very strange thing, other than this sounds like someone added something that shouldn't have been added. You know, it's sort of a, hey, rules of conduct, don't kick anyone in the balls. And in case you need to know why I'm explaining this or why I'm talking about this, I had mentioned in a prior playthrough, or if I haven't, I'll say it now. This concept of Christian nationalism that is a popular topic right now. Alright, this should be about it for the commander. She should be dead here in the next turn or so. But concept of Christian nationalism in terms of taking what founding fathers and how the government is founded and taking the idea of making the United States specifically a Christian nation, because the separation of church and state, which has been interpreted in different ways throughout the decades, to them signifies that government should have no place in telling people how to worship. However, people should be allowed to tell the government what is and is not appropriate. Okay? And sort of force your religious belief, your viewpoints into government. That's okay. But the other way is not okay. And other people have interpreted that law as, you know, church should not interfere with government and government shouldn't interfere with church. That they are separate entities and they exist in a separate realm. One in a spiritual and one in the physical realm. So, that's just my thoughts on the subject. And I've sort of been trying to square myself with this because, you know, I'm not well versed in the Bible, and I kind of wanted to see what was there. And I'm, again, getting to that point where I'm just
more or less finished up the big ones, you know, the books of Moses, which are, you know, the ones the Lord lays down and says, hey, thou shalt not.
We did it!
How does that square with this idea of Christian nationalism?